Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. And today I am here by Mr. Robert Wolfe. He is the author of the highly acclaimed book, Not a Real Enemy. It has been nominated for multiple awards, including the Nautilus Book Award, National Indie Excellence Award, Living Now Book Award, as well as the Reader's Favorite Book Award for 2023. Today he's here and he's going to share a lot of his backstory about the book, share a little bit of the writing process, and share the kind of overall backstory of the book. So I'm really excited to have him on. He originally appeared on Lethal Venom, so this is our second time meeting. So I am very excited to have him on. So Robert, thank you so much for coming on the Southern Reads podcast. I'm looking forward to hearing about your book today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor, and this is the first one that I've done. I've done a few repeat podcasts, but this is the first one I've done with same host but a different platform. So, new adventure, charting new territory. And thank you for inviting me. I'm honored.
Absolutely. Well, the main story that you kind of will talk about today is this book called Not a Real Enemy, The True Story of a Hungarian Jewish Man's Fight for Freedom, which it's a kind of a biographical retelling of something that's real personal to you. But before we dive into that, share with me a little bit about the backstory behind the writing process for this book.
Well, I was never really much of a writer. You may or may not remember I'm a radiologist, and I've recently retired after 35 years in, 44 when you include college and med school and all that. I did my share of writing for medical journals, but that was usually under the guidance of a professor or a colleague. So I had a small experience in writing. Never thought I would write a book. My dad passed away in 1997. Unfortunately, my mom passed away in 2016. And a historian friend, after my mom passed, handed me the disc of my dad's story. So to rewind one more time, my dad and mom wrote his autobiography in the 70s, and they wrote the stories as though they'd happened the previous day. Went from paper and pencil to typewriter to computer to disc. So we flash forward now to 2016. Historian friend hands me the disc, says, "You've got to read this." And I didn't think much of it at the time. Plus, I was busy taking care of my mom's affairs. Retired for a year, 2017. 2018, I actually went back to work as a radiologist for another 4 or 5 years before I finally retired. And that brought me to the book. A friend of mine from Michigan said, I need help reading x-rays and ultrasounds. So between cases, I loaded up the disc, and you've got two screens as a radiologist. One is the queue of the patients, and the other are the images. So in between, on the left was my dad's autobiography, and I dictated it into a biography. And that took about a year, I guess. So now this is 2018. Tried to query agents and publishers, didn't really do well with that. So I decided let's get a couple of beta reads. Let's see what impartial people say that are authors and that do beta reads. So one of them, Lisa Tenner in Rhode Island, where I trained actually, she told me about Janice Harper. Janice Harper is my co-author, and I let her run with it. I handed her the book and the story. It was kind of a dull biography, and she turned it into something special. Converging stories, parallel stories, letters to and from home, conversations, but all based on what my dad said in his autobiography, which those stories they wrote, like I said, they wrote them as though they'd happened the previous day, even though it covers Hungary from, at the end of World War I to the end of the Hungarian Revolution of '56. So it's quite a span.
So doing the research for the book, how did you go about researching the book? And was there a particular genre, kind of a way that you wanted to approach this? Was it more, did you want to be more fiction, biographical, nonfiction? What was kind of your thought process at the time?
Well, it was my dad's autobiography, but he had already passed, so it was hard to legitimize doing it that way. So it is a biography. It's an adventure. It's a history book of little-known Hungary from the end of World War I, like I said, to the end of the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. Moving forward, after Janice finished, and I don't know if I'm answering your question properly, we vetted out and queried. Well, this is 20 edits later, but we vetted out and queried about 12 agents and publishers that we thought that might be interested in publishing the book. We were literally down to the last publisher, Amsterdam Publishers, who've done a wonderful job getting the print out. Holocaust books is all they do. This one is special because Dad was a four-time escape artist, and there are 20 miracles in the book, and it also covers communist Hungary. And all those miracles was such a draw, it was such a motivator that I couldn't leave it on a disc. I couldn't leave it on a computer. And anybody that's read it, that's actually read the book, has said, "Wow, this is a super book. It's a life changer. It really it changed my life, and I'm glad that it's making other people think hard, especially in the days now of anti-Semitism, hatred, racism. What my parents talked about 60, 80, 100 years ago is still going on now, and it's just different ways for people to maim and torture and persecute. And so this is why my parents wrote this story as though maybe they knew that I was going to redo it. I mean, I hate it when my parents are right, but they were right. So they left it for me, and that's their legacy back to them. And a history lesson, and trying to get people to realize the perils of anti-Semitism specifically, but also racism, Islamophobia, Asian hatred after the coronavirus epidemic, all that accountability. It's not a billion people's fault that we had coronavirus or that a handful of people plotted 9/11. Now, Nazi Hungary and communist Hungary, different story. There were many people that were involved with the hatred on the right end of the gun, and unfortunately, the Hungarian Jews were on the wrong, and all the Jews in Europe, and of course, World War II was a very ugly war.
So when you were learning about your father's story and when you kind of picked up the book after he had passed, was there anything in the book that you read or learned about that was kind of surprising to you for you to hear?
Oh, yeah, everything. Yeah. Sorry, now I remember your question about the research. Yeah, I did a lot of research, photos, history, a lot of time spent, and my co-author Janice did the same. We queried historians to review the accuracy of the book, all that kind of thing. A retired historian from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in D.C., the three professors that did the testimonials, they all reviewed the history for accuracy. So, and Janice even she read up on the culture and the food and the dialogue from back in the day. So a lot of research, a lot of time spent with some help, of course. A lot of surprises. My dad got beaten as a kid, and I didn't realize that. He had a pretty spoiled upbringing, but when he was late to come home, his dad would chase him around. He would beat him, and I think that might have made my dad more disciplined. He was a good student, but my his parents wanted him to be accountable and him to be responsible, knowing that they already had a disadvantage being Jewish. So that was a surprise. I remembered his first escape from forced labor camp when I first read the manuscript 30 years ago, but I didn't think much of the book otherwise. But then I kept reading and reading and said, "Oh my God, Dad's had four escapes, and all these miracles. The way he got into med school, the way he found out about what happened to his parents at Auschwitz. I never really thought about those kind of things. And then cloak and dagger stories under communist Hungary, arguing with armed Russian soldiers to get into Austria, things like that. So just about every page, I learned something new. Plus the history of Hungary, the Red Terror, the White Terror, Horthy. The Jews always felt, even after World War One and into the 20s weren't so bad, but into the 30s, 40s, and 50s under the communists, the Jews felt that they were always going to be. They always had to look over their shoulders. They always had to worry, no matter who was in charge. And so I learned a lot about the history and my parents' legacy, and of course what happened to his friends and family, and people like clowns dying, clowns getting murdered, and disabled people, the very old, the very young. Dad was useful because he was a young man, 21, 22, when he was hauled off to forced labor camp. So in the end, that saved his life, even though only about 5% of forced laborers survived, and most of them were taken to prisoner of war camps, even though they were never armed. My dad was in hiding, so he didn't have to experience that, but he'd been through enough already. A lot more too. I mean, they were frontliners in the Hungarian Revolution. I didn't realize that. Dad was a surgeon. He was an OBGYN and doubled down as a trauma surgeon. 3,000 people died in that war, plus countless refugees and injuries. And my mom ran the blood bank. She was a med student at the time. So that was something I didn't realize. And then they decided to leave the country after that. They said two wars was enough. The communists were no better to the Jewish people than the Nazis, short of gathering them and corralling them in town squares and hauling them off in trains to be murdered. So, but you couldn't have a Jewish wedding. Mom and dad had an illegal Jewish wedding. That got my mom's uncle in trouble. I didn't know that story. Tortured for like a year in a communist prison, that kind of thing. They tried to get him to confess to the Raoul Wallenberg murder, and he wouldn't. So they tortured him and sleepless nights. And he was a surgeon too. So he was the head of a hospital in Budapest before that happened. But they had a KGB guy was at their wedding, and we assume that is because they had an illegal Jewish wedding that he was arrested. But I guess it was a dual purpose arrest. Very bad.
So when you launched the book, did you expect the book to get the amount of recognition and the amount of acclaim that it has received? Because it has received multiple awards. It's won 4 awards total. It's gotten so many 5-star reviews on Amazon and everything. Did you expect people to react and really gravitate towards this book as they have?
Well, it's just a great feeling that people are reading it. It's not as many as I'd like. I mean, it's getting up there. I'm still doing this. The book's been out for a few years, as you know, but no, I mean, I expected to do well, but it's not a New York Times bestseller. That's a dream, of course. And book recognition is not necessarily the same as book sales. It's a very fickle business. So still working hard at trying to get people to understand the story. But yes, I'm pleased with and I owe my team that. I mean, if it weren't for Janice and Mark, the guy who's with me through the whole journey since 2018, he got my website set up. He helped me with social media. The guy that did the book cover from Croatia, and then PR help, marketing help. So I owe it to the team to, and like with the 4 awards, it's great. It's nice. It's nice to know the people in the know care about the story. They know how important it is. They get the quality. I'm not the type to pat myself on the back, sit on my laurels, but I'm pleased with that. And like I said, I owe it to my team. If it weren't for my team, none of this would be happening. So, and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean squat if it doesn't help me in the fight against anti-Semitism. So that's kind of my answer to that. But I'm happy with it, but I think we could do better as far as more recognition. For every success I've had probably 10 failures. It's a tough business. You've got to, and book presentations, they're fun to do, but the travel is tough. And podcasts are fun to do, but they're a little bit of work too. And of course, TV and radio interviews when you get them, fantastic experience. And that's another thing. I mean, that's the great thing about this is, yeah, as much as there's apathy and indifference about anti-Semitism and racism, especially if it doesn't involve you, it's nice meeting great people like you and other hosts and people at book presentations. It's people that actually care, that they give a hoot. So that's been one of the best parts of this.
Speaking of the anti-Semitism and racism, you really would like to help kind of curtail this and kind of help can it. So how do you think reading the book and sharing these stories are will help with those two big issues?
Well, people have to realize the perils of it, and if I'm fortunate enough to have them invite me for a book presentation, then I get to tell them about what's going on today and how it's the same as it was in the past. Yeah, just different ways to maim and different ways to persecute. Like I said, ultimately, I want to teach the book in the classroom. I've done 4 book signings at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in D.C., plus a few other Holocaust museums and synagogues and churches and things like that, but it's never enough. I want to teach more in the classroom. I did University of South Carolina last year. It was a good talk, but it was more adult oriented. There weren't many students there. But some of these authors that work with Amsterdam publishers, they're doing tons of talks at schools. And, I try to reach out, but I'm doing it myself. I don't really have a secretary anymore or anybody to help me with that. And that's a lot of work too. But ultimately, I want the book to be taught in the classroom. Hate and love are taught at home. They're taught in the family, and they can be taught in the classroom. We talk about bullying and things like that. But that's my ultimate goal. The more people that know about the story, the better. And not just my book, the other Holocaust, there are many other good Holocaust books that are out there too. So let's just I can't convert all of Hamas or skinhead or neo-Nazi thinking, but the 99% of us that love family, our careers, our work, some free time if we can get it. I'm trying to wrap my arms around those people so that we don't let this thing get out of control, this hatred. And and the classrooms. Here's another colleges that have done protests. Those would all be great places to do a book presentation. Teach people, look, you guys, before you keep talking, listen to what history is really about. Read a good history book, and listen to witnesses. Listen to people that experienced all of that.
What's the main takeaway message that you want people to get when they read this book and when they purchase it and read it for the first time, what's the overall message that you want people to leave with?
Well, what happened to my dad could happen to you, me, or any one of us. It could be a bad neighbor, a bad business deal, bad local government, federal government, foreign government, natural disaster. You could find yourself on the run, not knowing where your next place to sleep, meal, work is. So that it can happen to any one of us. And that's that I could feel that in my dad's story. The other thing is, despite everything he went through, he showed determination and hope and resilience and ultimately redemption as he became an OBGYN and delivered over 10,000 babies in the Detroit area. It doesn't bring back the 50 or 60 million people from World War II, but it is a form of redemption. And amazing how he had no PTSD. He was jovial and jolly, and he just showed how resilient you can be even in your darkest time. And if you've ever been stuck in the mud, which I have been, even recently, it's sometimes it's hard to get out, but try to be like my dad and have that kind of determination. And it's very inspiring, the story and our book talk. And so if people hear my book presentation, they understand what we're talking about. But hope, determination, resilience, freedom, hate, love, and ultimately redemption.
Do you plan on writing any more books in the future, or was this kind of a one and done experience and just kind of seeing how having this on a resume, it's like, I've done it, I've tried it, I don't think I'll do it again.
It's a lot of work. There's no doubt about it. It's not like you just write the book and sit back and collect royalties. You get the marketing part's hard and the editing part's hard. I have three books in the top of my head, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do it. I'm supposed to be retired. I've had a few medical demons I'm trying to fight off, and if and when I do, maybe I will go to the next one, which would be the things they don't teach you in med school. It would be I've already got the ICBN number on it. It'd be kind of autobiographical, some humor, some life's lessons about things that they don't teach in school, like burnout and investing and insurances, all kinds of topics, and of course, med school itself, pre med, that gross anatomy, the wards, residency, and all the partnership track. So it would be a snippets book, and but I think that book could do well. I've had that book in my head for years, but I just never got it on paper. Third one would be the part two of my dad's story because we end in Vienna, but there were more pages. We cut it short because the book was getting long enough. But from their voyage from Vienna, Austria to the United States when they finally got settled in Detroit, that had harrowing moments too. Not quite as exciting as part one, but it's still that would be a decent book. And people have already asked for that kind of thing. I would have to probably go back to Janice for help with that. And the fourth one would be how to invest in a bear market. I know I'm no perfect expert, but I do know I probably know more about investing than 95% of the country. I've been watching CNBC for 30 years and have had Investors Business Daily, the New York Times, Barron's, Value Line. So I'm big into that, and I'd like to tell people to invest early and often, dividends reinvested, and stay the course. And that wouldn't be a long book, but it could be a book that could be fruitful too. But out of all of those, even if I did those, I think this book that I just did would be by far the most important. And the other option is just do nothing. Go back to doing more gym time and golf and try to relax and be retired. So I'm kind of caught. I'm kind of caught between the two options. But if I did do the second book, it would be about the things they don't teach in med school. And I think that'd be a fun book to write, a fun book to read, and valuable.
Well, for anyone listening, if they are wanting to write or they want to have try their dip their toe in writing and want to give it a shot, what's your best piece of advice of how they can approach writing?
Well, don't rush. Don't feel the time pressure, but don't give up on it. If you need a break, take a break. But if you take some time off, that's okay. That's it's all right and don't procrastinate too long because then you'll kind of be out of the loop. And I put the book down for a while when I heard about what happened to my dad's parents at Auschwitz. I had to walk away for a bit. Um, have low expectations and you'll be happier than if you have high expectations. I mean, work hard, make sure the book is good quality. That's why I spent so much time and money and hired a team because I didn't want to put out something that was crap. And so that's important too. I mean, don't just write to try to make money. Like my dad said about medicine, don't do it for the money with his Hungarian accent. So if you enjoy it, do it. But hopefully you're making a living another way. Not everybody gets to be Stephen King or whoever, Grisham, all these guys are so famous now that I hear they have teams of writers to help them with their books so they can bring out more and more. Get help if you got the money and you know somebody who and you know somebody who's in the know, like a beta read, somebody who can help you with marketing, social media, whatever, then get help if you can afford it and somebody's willing to help you and you trust them. No substitute for experience. I say that to the medical students and the residents, people that have more experience than. There's no substitute in experience, whether you're in medicine or you're writing, trying to market or publish a book. You learn as you go, and hopefully you get better over time. Probably quite a few more, don't, but low expectations, and then you might be pleasantly pleased if things work out better than you think. And it's going to be work.
Well, Robert, I appreciate you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today to share your book and share this wonderful book with my audience. Where can people go to find the book, and where can they go to follow you on the socials as well if they would like to keep
Well,
up to date with what you have?
well, I've got a website, robertjwolfmd.com. I've got a YouTube channel that's packed, both of those, with material. Not a Real Enemy by Robert Wolf. So you can find me those ways. You can buy the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, and at least four Holocaust museums: the United States Holocaust Museum in D.C., the Illinois Holocaust Museum, Zeckelman Center in Michigan, and then the Holocaust Center in Long Island. I forget the exact name of it. Also, the book's in 30 library systems. So if you just ask, or if you Google Not a Real Enemy, or you Google Robert J. Wolf, MD, you'll find me, you'll find it. And then socials, I'm on Meta, X, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, which is my favorite. It's the most professional, and Blue Sky. So we're out there, no doubt about it. No lack of effort here.
And I will put all these links in the description box below. All these links will be available for you guys to find. Feel free to reach out, read the book, and support him. And again, I'll put all these links in the description box as well for you to find. Feel free to follow me on the socials as well. You can reach out to me on Instagram and TikTok at Southern Reads. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. And you can also me out through my website, noahspodcast.com. There you'll learn and find links to all my podcasts as well as links to my socials and just other information as well. Feel free to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you get notified when new episodes like this come out in the future. I really appreciate you all so much for tuning in today's episode. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I will see you on the next episode of Southern Reads.